In this hard decision on Syria, might the country not benefit right now from a rollicking debate on what to do here, on what's right and what's prudent and what is in keeping with our values and our obligations and, frankly, our means to make a difference? Today, a congressman who represents a district that has one of the largest concentrations of active duty and retired military service members in the country spearheaded a letter to President Obama calling on him to please talk to Congress about this issue. Dear Mr. President, we strongly urge you to consult and receive authorization from Congress before ordering the use of U.S. military force in Syria. While the founders wisely gave the president the authority to act in emergencies, they foresaw the need to ensure public debate and the active engagement of Congress prior to committing U.S. military assets. Engaging our military in Syria when no direct threat to the U.S. exists and without prior congressional authorization would violate the separation of powers that is clearly delineated in our Constitution. If you deem that military action in Syria is necessary, Congress can reconvene at your request. We stand ready to come back into session, consider the facts before us, and share the burden of decisions made regarding U.S. involvement in the quickly escalating Syrian conflict. Sincerely, 37 members of Congress, at least as of a few hours ago, maybe more by now. Joining us now is Congressman Scott Rigell. He's a Republican of Virginia. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Rigell, it's really good to have you with us tonight. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. I listened to your introduction. I think you framed the issue well, and it's really a serious matter.
I think, thank you for saying that. I think your constitutional argument in your letter is sound. You can tell from my introduction that I agree with it. I disagree with you on one point where you say that Congress stands ready to come back into session and share the burden of decisions on this issue. I know that you say you are and your co-signers must be, but as a whole, do you really think Congress stands ready and able to do that right now?
Well, I believe that deep inside each member of Congress, regardless of party, is the desire to do the right thing. The right thing in this case is, should the president call us into session, if he really believes that the use of force is both warranted and imminent, as I expressed in the letter, signed and joined by Republicans and Democrats, now over 40, and we'll have, I believe, more tomorrow, then he has a duty to call us into session, give us, say, for example, 24 hours, to come back. There are members of Congress around the world on different trips. Some are at home, of course. But that's enough time to get here. This is what we do, Rachel. There's no more important issue before the American people than the use of American force and putting our young folks into harm's way. As you mentioned, I have the privilege of representing a district that has the highest concentration of men and women in uniform in the country. We'd be here. The president should come forth and lay out the most compelling case, present the facts as much as he can, and of course respecting the intelligence sources that we have, and then give us a relatively short time to deliberate, and then to, should it be warranted, provide statutory authority. This is the moral foundation upon which he could proceed, and if the facts are there, he'd have the support of the American people.
There's no reason that the president himself has to call Congress back. Congress could reconvene of its own authority. Obviously, this is an independent responsibility of Congress to make its own assessment on these terms. Do you think that's possible, and would it make a difference who called for Congress to take such an action?
Well, it's theoretically possible that each respective leader of each body, Speaker Boehner, could call us back into session. That's his prerogative. I'm sure the same is true of Majority Leader Senator Reid. Now, it's very clear, though, that the president has that authority. It's clearly delineated in our Constitution. And again, if he believes that the facts warrant intervention, that's a serious matter. He'd really have to lay forth the strategic objective. Simply punishing the Assad regime, however heinous it is, you could characterize it easily as criminal. Punishment is not in and of itself a strategic objective.
In terms of the way to move forward here, obviously members of your party, particularly the conservative wing of your party, has been not friendly to the idea that the United Nations should constrain U.S. action in any way. And us working with the United Nations, even collaboratively, is something that has been troubling to a lot of Republicans. In this case, when I read those comments from Hans Blix today when he's obviously making this very inflammatory comparison to what happened a decade ago in the lead up to the war in Iraq. I am compelled by his argument that the UN weapons inspectors are there. They have at least limited access to that site. There's no reason not to wait for their definitive proof. If for no other reason, then it might bring more international allies on board, maybe even enough to get UN authorization for some sort of international action. What's your reaction to that?
Well, their specific purpose is to determine whether chemical weapons were used or not. I think the evidence is already pretty clear, and they're going to come out with the affirmative, that is, that they were used. Their purpose is not to identify or determine who or what entity used the weapons.
Right.
So I really believe that the president's got to lay forth before the American people. And one thing that I would maybe differ with you just a little bit in your introduction. You referenced much of the need to go before the international community. There's a good reason to do that. But first and foremost, the moral foundation upon which a commander-in-chief can exercise force, in this case where a threat is not imminent and we've not been attacked, is really to go before the American people through their elected representatives. You know, when the American people are given good information, they'll make good decisions. I found this to be true in my district. So I'm really hopeful. I'm optimistic. Perhaps it's naivete or idealism. That's all right. We're going to keep this fight to encourage the president to call us into session should he think that force is needed.
Congressman Scott Rigell, it is a particular pleasure for me when Republican elected officials agree to come on this show. A rare pleasure, unfortunately. But thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. It's good luck to you. Good luck to you. Thanks for being here.